What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Altar again, and this time for the 7th, 8th, ninth. I lost count at this point in time. But we return with Tuomas of Wolfheart, as well as Before the Dawn and Dawn of Solace. Thank you so much for coming back onto the show. As usual, it's great to have you here.
It's as usual. It's all my pleasure. So I agree. I've lost count. It might be eighth.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let's see. The first time I interviewed you was in person when it was you guys, Morse Countercangren and Morse Prisiamus.
Yeah.
And then we did a phone interview during the pandemic, and then a bunch of Zoom calls. We've done it a bunch of times. I feel like I think I interviewed you for every cycle since Constellation of the Black Light. I think that was the first album cycle, and it's been everything since then.
But that is cool.
Yep. But it's so great to have you here because Draconian Darkness is another fantastic Wolfheart album. The last time I spoke to you, we were talking about the new Before the Dawn album. Being that you put out the Stormbringers Before the Dawn album between King of the North and now, was there maybe any new doors that unlocked for Wolfheart in a way, or was this a brand new approach in a way, or did it just sort of feel like you were picking up where you left off after King of the North?
It was more like King of the North was actually dividing album in a way, because when we started to have the plan of bringing Before the Dawn back, for a very short moment I needed to rethink what is the path for each band, because King of the North is very Before the Dawnish album in a way for Wolfheart, because it was more mid-tempo, and that was the direction we were heading at that time, taking the tempo down a little bit, not that many blast beats, stuff like that. But also we realized that that's even though we still love the album, we play many of the songs live, but we enjoy darker and a lot more aggressive stuff, especially when we play live. Some of the King of the North songs is still, I do fully believe that it's as good music as we wanted to make at that time. But when you play those songs live, it's a little bit less challenging, let's put it that way. On this new album, I'm just driving home from another rehearsals. We don't usually rehearse this much, but at least for my part, with the guitars and the vocals, I'm pretty much fucked with the new album. It's a lot more challenging, a lot more complicated, but it's also a lot more rewarding that way. So after King of the North, the whole band knew that we're gonna do more aggressive, a lot more darker, more faster album with this one, and that kind of left this certain more basic melodious style for Before the Dawn. So that made at the same time room for Before the Dawn existing. That wasn't planned, but I'm now writing the next Before the Dawn album right now. So now into my head, it's so much clearer where each band is actually standing musically.
Yeah, I mean, I did see some Before the Dawn DNA in King of the North, but I don't say it's a bad thing. I mean, I think the elephant in the room with that would be collaborating with Jesse from Killswitch over the last album. That definitely was not something I was able to foresee from listening to Constellation of the Black Light and earlier material, but I still think it was an awesome addition. Would you say then that maybe Draconian Darkness is almost kind of a return to form, if you will?
Kind of, yeah. I think the theme of the previous album also dictated the music quite a lot, because Wolves of Karelia was a concept album about the Winter War, and for a Finnish person that is very inspiring, but also very dark and aggressive, like a concept. So you don't bring much beauty and happiness from those absolutely brutal 3 months of war between Soviet Russia and Finland back in the days. King of the North is pretty romantic album when it comes to the concept for the writer, because for a Finnish writer, you get to dig into the mythology and the pagan history of the Nordic countries and Finland. So that was steering the music to be more melodic than dark, because it wasn't a dark concept. It was very a nature-oriented album, and very the Nordic in its old beauty kind of a thing. So that that took away some of the harshness and the darkness of our music that usually should be there. This album is the flip side of the coin, and it's about the human beings completely abandoning the respect towards the nature that we used to have in the pagan times, and now we just kill and burn everything. So this is more like end of the world, very like this like a doomsday vibe album. So that like brought the darkness to the music like automatically.
Do you feel like I can't remember if I asked you this before or not, but like having concepts of the Winter War and having the romantic aspects of King of the North to now having this very like draconian darkened element, because Draconian Darkness I feel like is and I mean it as a compliment, a vague enough title to the point where like I feel Draconian Darkness within my own trials and tribulations every day inward. So like Draconian Darkness is a feeling just as much as a concept that you're demonstrating on here. So does your own personal life ever dictate what you incorporate in the album too? Or do you tend to like to make Wolfheart just a series of different concepts distant from who you personally are?
Well, with last previous two albums, that I didn't have much of me in any of the lyrics and that side. But this album is a lot more of me observing the topic from different angles, and then some of them have a like historical angle. Some of them are more like the human being, like the humankind of our passion of waging wars with basically no reasons at all, and like stuff like that. But on this album, it's more me observing the whole thing more than me just like going into the rabbit hole with books and documentaries and interviews, and then basing the lyrics based of those. So this is a lot more not my opinions in that way, but like from my perspective. So it does differ from the previous two albums quite a lot.
I'd imagine that there's a fine line that you have to walk where like maybe you're listening to the music or you're looking at your lyrics and then you realize, oh my God, there's too much of me in here. I can't like enough about me. We got to make it more about the concept. But then you just look at, and then you also have to look at it and be like, wow, I feel like that this is a script for National Geographic and not a metal song. So I feel like there has to be sort of like a fine line that you have to walk, right?
Well, not with Wolfheart because it's I don't like how can I explain it easily. One of the reasons I have Dawn of Solace back in business is that I can everything that is very personal and where I feel that I'm very much exposed as a person. That always happens with Dawn of Solace because I don't do the vocals. I don't need to stand on the front. If we play like one show in a year, I'm gonna play drums. So it's like I don't need to represent the music publicly in that way. So with Wolfheart, it's like it's not my personal topic. I'm looking at with new album Draconian Darkness. I'm just looking at the state of the world and why we got here and what's gonna happen next. But it's just me like observing already existing things. With Dawn of Solace, it's my sorrow, my sadness, my solitude, those kind of topics. And there, I don't draw the line in that way. I just push all the personal stuff to different bands, so I don't need to stand in the front, facing the audience, and then tell something about myself. Because I don't really think I'm talking about myself when I'm just stating the facts of the state of the world and the fucked up ways of humankind just killing everything around us. So that's just basically me observing stuff, but I don't open up myself. At least I don't think so. So with Wolfheart, very easy. With Dawn of Solace, also easy because I just cut myself off from the music when it comes to like performing to the audience.
Do you feel like because being such a prolific musician and being multi-instrumental, being able to express yourself rhythmically, lyrically, vocally, melodically through guitars and bass, does a different side of your instrumentation express a different emotion? Like, do you express something in a rhythmic sense with the drums that you can't express vocally or with the guitar or so on and so forth?
Not really that way, but it is sometimes surprising how different parts of songs I wrote myself kind of like hit me. Like I would always like automatically I would think it would be always a guitar melody that strikes the hardest. But now that I also just got the new Dawn of Solace album mastered, it's been busy busy year writing music, and going through those songs now. I'm planning the singles and the videos. Like in certain songs, like the biggest hook for myself emotionally might be like bass drum pattern before the chorus begins, or like it's not expressing. I don't think I think that at all when I write the music. And I don't see the boundaries because I can so easily switch from instrument to another. So I don't need to, I don't stop to think that what you just mentioned. I just, if I feel that I need to express something more deeply, I go do that with guitar. If that is not enough, I do that with piano. If some, like it's not part of the process where I actually stop and think. But I do realize that when I listen to my music, that like the hooks are in weird places and weird instruments. It might be the bass line that comes in on the second part of the second verse that I didn't think about when I was writing, but it really hits me when I'm listening to the music. But it's not. I don't think about that at all when I write the music. Like because yeah.
Do you think that there is such a thing as thinking too much? Because I know that like a lot of people, observation and just sitting back and observing, it's just as much part of their artistic process as picking up the guitar or picking up the paintbrush. But sometimes we're so transfixed by what we are observing around us that we almost forgot why we got there in the first place, and that we tend to not pick up the paintbrush at all because we get so stuck observing and thinking.
I actually never thought it that way. Like what came to my mind is like a different way of getting stuck is like, especially when I think that happens more with musicians, because if you are like a painter or writer, you get to dig into the actual work more directly. With when you are doing an album, for example, you have the pre-production that follows the writing process, and then you have the final recording. So there's a lot of steps where you can lose the connection to the piece of art that you're actually doing. And there's like also like painter doesn't paint the painting 10 times. Writer can get to the final, like if you do like a poem or something like that, the first version might be the final one. When you write a song, that's not going to be the song that is going to be on the album. There's huge amount of repetition and like an unnecessary thinking process, because it involves other people, it involves schedules. A lot of things has to happen to make the song as a part of an album. So I think in music you can get stuck in a different way. You can get stuck into the process, and then you lose something of the song, or you just eventually become deaf for the music, and you just start adding stuff there because you need to refresh the music to yourself, or you take stuff out because you, with some certainty, you get bored, or with music it's very difficult to be super spontaneous. When it comes to like getting the song from the writing process to the album, which is the reason I really enjoy doing the lyrics in the studio. I do all the guitar melodies while we record the album. So it's like I really want to leave a lot of like space to be spontaneous. But what you mentioned about that, like very good question. Like I need to say like this has been one of my most favorite interviews so far, because I was ready to tell this same stories about the album cover, album title, the lyrics, the tours, what I've done literally hundreds of times. But this is the first interview that I need to stop and think.
That's what I love to do, and I tend to confuse a lot of people with them.
But it's a good confusion. It's a good confusion because a lot of things you don't really think about yourself, about your own process. Also, you don't you don't stop and think much. I don't think. I try to think as less as possible. But what you just said, because I do like to observe, and I do like to have even the smallest triggers to bring me the sparks for the new ideas for the songs. But that's actually, I never thought of that, but it has happened to me a lot of times that I get stuck on the moment about the observing part, and I'm there. It's just I never take the step to the actual process of creating the art based on the inspiration that I saw or heard.
Yeah, because I do wonder how different a hit song or an album or a piece of art would be if they just sat in their seat and observed just an hour or two longer, or if they did it an hour or two shorter on just how different it can be. Because
Yeah.
the world is going to impact you one way or another. I don't buy for a second, and I used to say it too, but I don't buy for a second when an artist says, "Oh, the real world doesn't impact me. I'm not influenced by what's around me. It's all coming from within." That's bullshit. And anybody artist who says that is lying to you. You're always influenced by the world around you.
That is correct, because it's not like it would necessarily, it doesn't affect directly on the writing process on that moment, but it affects what your mood is, what is your like emotional status at the moment, and yeah, of course, it like everything affects us.
Yeah, but
It's not like the surrounding world would be the main source of inspiration, but everything that happens around you, yeah, of course, all your senses pick up all the triggers constantly, and that affects whatever you do on a daily basis.
Definitely.
Especially that I fully agree.
Yeah, I mean, even when people were locked down, you're even looking at the same four walls every single day. It's going to do something to the receptors in your brain that's going to alter how you are. So the world is always impacting you. But circling back to what we talked about, the differences, I think the big difference between like the music and art, Wolfheart is a band, Dawn of Solace is a band, and even though there's a lot of different visionaries involved, I feel like with art, you could repaint the same painting over and over again. I can't tell you how many times I've either punched a hole through my canvas or painted over the whole thing in general to start over. There's a very famous story of a sculptor named Alberto Giacometti, and he literally would take his sculptures apart and rebuild them thousands of times over, to the point where the curators at the gallery actually had to tie him down to a chair and hold him down while they took the sculpture to the gallery, because he wouldn't stop redoing them.
I never heard of that. That's cool. Like, I would hope that music would be more flexible, but then again, it's not the art itself that is the problematic part. Like if you are a painter or writer, you can just like it doesn't involve this kind of machinery that music business have. Like, everything needs to be ready half a year before the release. Everything is tied to so many schedules, so many deadlines, so that kind of like makes it more stiff. But I've done some tests. I'm not going to mention the songs or the bands, but I might have done that in my music.
Yeah.
Deliberately having like a core or structure of a song, which I felt on the writing process that this could go either way. This could go super dark or super like melancholic, and later on I might have done the other option of that song.
It can happen from many different ways. But it's funny because I've always said that music is the best representation on how time is relative. Draconian Darkness came out on my birthday, by the way, but it came out last week. So for a lot of the listeners, we're going to look back at this album and be like, man, this takes you back to the late summer, early fall of 2024. But you're listening back to that, and it's probably taking you back to late 2022. King of the North is probably taking you back to, when I listened to the piano introduction of King of the North to Skyforger, that piano introduction, that is a great soundtrack to my 2022. But I'm willing to bet that that's your soundtrack to 2020. If I'm
Yeah. It's because as a writer, you are always like living in a future in that sense. Because while the audience, like, even when the label hears the album first time, those songs are probably at least 1 year old for the writer, and you are in a different place already. So everything just like. It's so especially now it's been weird to like do some of the interviews, because I've been spending a lot of time in the studio working with the Dawn of Solace album, and so I already moved on from the Wolfheart album. To me, that became old album in that sense really quickly. Not musically, because we are just starting the touring cycle and we are starting to play the new songs, and that's always the best thing ever, to be able to add new songs to the set list. But when it comes to a lot of questions about the lyrics and the writing process and about certain songs, I during the interviews, I need to go back to my lyrics and see the track list just to be reminded what was the album about again, because my head is already on another album, another production that's gonna come out maybe at some point next year or so.
Does that maybe create like a bit of a disconnect between like the people listening to the album and yourself. You play a show and people say, "Man, I love Draconian Darkness. I love the new album. This really resonates with me now." And like just and to them it's hitting them for the first time. Do you almost feel a little bit disconnected with your fans? Be like, "Oh, that's awesome. I've been listening to these songs for the last 2 years now, so it doesn't resonate with me as much anymore." Like, do you think that maybe the fans and the artists would relate to each other if everybody was hearing these songs for the first time at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. I'm in a completely different place than the audience. Yeah, that's for sure. I don't think I think it's only a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Then again, I don't know about anything else. It's always been like this. This is my 24th album I'm releasing, so I think it would be weird to have it the other way around. Anyway, so it's a different thing. Like, of course, the album is old for the band and the writer of the music, but this is also the first time we get to play the shows live. So those kind of like that brings a different energy and refreshes the songs. But when it comes to like questions about the album creation process, then it can be complicated for me when I'm already dived into another album, which is the thing in my head. Like, but
Yeah,
that's my problem. That's because this is the downside of being over creative. That just makes things more confusing. I don't think it's a good thing, but it's just the way it is.
it really is. Like, you almost question if you really are insane. You just get all these ideas and they go in one ear and out the other. Sometimes they go up and above and beyond. You hear them constantly. You put pen to paper. It may not be as good as an idea when it's in the real world as opposed to when it was first in your head, and then vice versa. It really is like a form of insanity in itself. I feel like that knowing how to be an artist is just as much of a skill set as to learn the art of itself, whether it's visual or music or anything like that.
I do fully agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you as always for another thought-provoking and informative and enlightening discussion. It's every time I know I'm going to talk to him, I'm always going to learn something new. There's a reason why I always have a sketchbook waiting so I can draw after these conversations. Just the usual promotion. Draconian Darkness is out now. What else could we be expecting from Wolfheart, Dawn of Solace, Before the Dawn, for the near future, if you're allowed to say, of course?
Well, new Dawn of Solace album is already done, but I'm waiting for the details from the label. Already started writing for the next Before the Dawn album, so hopefully both would come out next year. But timing is not in my hands, and now we are just focusing on the touring part of the Wolfheart, and that's gonna hopefully keep us busy until end of next year. So
yeah, and we will be seeing you in New York again, I hope.
I do really hope so. It didn't help that your government raised the visa cost like 250%. That was a very annoying obstacle. It was never easy to get to play in North America. I don't like. Now, we have done so many countries with visas like South America, Russia, Australia, Japan, China, and still US is the most complicated country to get into to play a tour and shows when it comes to visa and paperwork. Like, by far, you are the winner. Like, no other countries, in any other country, it's weeks. In your case, it's months, like a half a year. But we do love to tour in North America and especially US. So we are doing everything we can to make it happen as fast as possible.
I'll write a letter to our government. I'm pretty sure they'll ignore it, but I definitely want to at least say I made the effort to help. But thank you so much. Everybody, we are here with Wolfheart, Draconian Darkness. It is out now. Pick that up. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.